I would buy more games new if I could buy the single player campaign thing for $40 and not have anything to do with the multiplayer. Because I never play the multiplayer in any of these games. I just don't give a toss. It's not of interest to me. So if I could buy the game, the portion of the game I want, not have to pay the full price for the product, and and then not get the thing I don't want, that sounds like a deal to me.
Yeah, well, I mean, tiered pricing is something the industry's needed forever. This whole $60 for everything, all the time, no matter what the game is, no matter what's in the game, I think that's been a big reason why the console market at the moment is the shambles it is now.
The problem I see, going off of Jim's point, is that it wouldn't be so much you'd be paying 40. It could be you're still paying 60, now you're just getting less, and then they charge separately for the multiplayer.
Well, yeah, and that absolutely could go that way. The free market will have to decide on that. And maybe it's one of those things where people will say, "Oh, fuck this," and then buy it anyway. Or the population of people who say, "Fuck this" is so small, and then the sheep will go out and buy everything. And that's unfortunate. But at the same time, I kind of love it when that stuff happens in a weird way, because it just points out to me, it's like, oh, okay, you're not the target audience, clearly. Like, and I'm okay. I'm okay. If I'm not the target audience, I can disregard something entirely.
My problem with that has always been short-term versus long-term, because you can... I mean, there's that old saying, you can shave a sheep as many times as you want, you can only skin it once. And I do worry that a lot of these things, customers now are saying, fine, we'll buy it, we'll buy whatever you shovel in our mouths, but I worry that eventually that's going to burn people. One too many times someone will pre-order a game that turns out to be a broken, unfinished piece of shit, mentioning no names, and that well will dry up, and eventually they can't keep going back and exploiting the same consumer base. Just a few years ago, Guitar Hero, one of the biggest franchises in town, nowhere now.
It's not nowhere. I've seen it. My movie theater has an arcade version of it, and people are always playing it, and I'm baffled every time.
Specifically, I mean, there's no more new games where
it's
out every year, and then Activision's like, oh, we did this too many times. And it can happen to Call of Duty. First-person shooters, massive this generation, they could just go after just being exploited for so much. I mean, it seems almost impossible now, but once upon a time, point-and-clicky real-time strategies were massive.
The thing with this whole offering multiplayer as a piecemeal, though, how many developers and how many games could actually get away with it and be able to sustain the multiplayer? Because as it stands, there are so many multiplayer games where we don't even want them. They're included. They're shoved in.
That's good, too.
No, you're right. That is good, because then we won't get them. They'll stop.
We won't get them anymore. They will cease to exist. If the option becomes buy a single-player experience or buy a multiplayer experience, the multiplayer experiences will have to be the best they possibly can be, and that market will thin. There will no longer be the dependence on making a multiplayer product, because the developers now aren't going to be, having to serve that market. We can serve specific markets. The markets are large enough.
In a best-case scenario.
In a best-case scenario.
Because once upon a time I was a massive fan of free-to-play, then Final Fantasy All the Bravest happened.
So what do we think about the Assassin's Creed pirate leak thing?
I like pirates.
I like pirates.
Don't really care about Assassin's Creed as much, so maybe this will get me in. I don't know.
I'd like a piratey game with the gameplay of Assassin's Creed. I think the Assassin's Creed gameplay suits piracy probably better than it does any sort of suggestion or implication of stealth.
Hypocritical on Ubisoft's part, though, given that they're so obsessed with hating pirates.
Are they?
Hate pirates.
I did not know that.
Trying to get rid of them. No pirates. Go away. Pirates.
That kind of pirate, right?
Yeah, it was a subtle play on words.
It was too highbrow for me.
I'm after Jon Stewart's job. Not enough pirate games. You'd
No,
think
there.
there'd be
Yeah,
more.
that's true. There aren't enough.
Then again, a few years ago, I said there's a surprising lack of zombie games. So,
Okay, that's the problem with this industry is it's always excessive, and you always want something, and then they come back, and you're like, no, no, I swear I
Not
didn't
that
want it.
much. Not that much. Stop.
There's no control.
well, that goes back to what I was saying about everything else, all my other problems with the industry. It can never be just enough. It's either not enough or too much.
There are no half measures
No.
going on here. But I mean, the pirate thing, it was so weird because it became so big in the popular culture with like Pirates of the Caribbean and so forth for like a very brief period. I don't think it ever, broke into the zombie craze that's been going on for the last several years. But pirates were big. And then, there were like a few pirate themed games. And they were like, people don't care.
Yeah.
But people get excited every time pirates come up in games. Is it just
They
poor
like
implementation?
I mean, there's so much potential with piracy. I mean, there's been many different types of pirate game. I mean, you do a ninja game, you're often just relegated to action. But with pirates, there are games about steering the ships, actual ship combat, action, adventure, strategy, role-playing games.
Well, I wonder what they would do, because people seem to like the naval combat in Assassin's Creed 3. I wonder what the gameplay split would be like for this.
The
Because
naval combat was the best part of Assassin's Creed.
theoretically, they could make that the focus of this if they wanted to.
Yeah. Actually, who I'd really like to see take on a pirate game is Rockstar. I'd love to see a high seas adventure game in the style of a Red Dead Redemption.
Ooh.
I mean, that has so much potential. They could
I want more
really-
games like Red Dead Redemption, please.
Yeah. There's talk that in the next generation of consoles, the consoles are going to have the capability to prevent the use of used games in the console.
Blah. I suppose we've got to actually extrapolate.
We probably should. There's been talk that it's going to be possible, and I guess Sony's passing the buck to the developers, or to the publishers, to decide whether or not they want to implement it for their specific titles.
I think that's the latest rumor, is it will be publisher controlled.
Okay. And then we recently had Ian Livingston from Eidos, thank you. Recently stated that the system is available on 360, that they're going to have that implemented.
He didn't say that it was gonna do it, just that it could if it
It
wanted.
could, yeah.
That's the weird thing, is that they keep using specific language and no one will really commit, not even Sony. Because Sony was like, we'll do the right thing.
They're
Well,
playing a
that
game
doesn't
of
tell
chicken.
us anything.
They're playing chicken. That's what's going on here. Because what would happen if only Microsoft or only Sony unilaterally across the board said, you can't play used games in this console? GameStop holds all the power. People who go into a GameStop, what they're going to see is they're going to see a 5x5 section of titles for the console that's blocked off used, and they're going to see an entire wall of software for the other one. And for people who are making a buying decision on what console they're going to want to buy, which one has the library in your eyes when you're standing there in the store looking at it?
No, yeah, publishers cuddle up to GameStop out of one corner of their mouth while slagging them off with the other for selling all these used games, but you're absolutely right.
It goes beyond GameStop, too. Here we have many of the big box retailers in the United States. Your Best Buy, your Target, they tested the waters with used game sales. They know the profit margins there. I think they'd like to exploit it more. And this is just the games industry. This would just be the games industry saying, no, stop. And the genie might be out of the bottle.
Yeah. Which is very silly, because Best Buy's trading, as well as being actually pretty decent. I'm told that they give some of their used money back to the publishers, but they've got something going on there. So they're finding ways to profit from the used market, and that's really what they should be doing, not just trying to kill it. Because I think the history of business has proven that if you don't adapt and try and work with changes in your market, you're fucked.
Well, and I think they do already profit from the used game market. I mean, here we have tons of games come out that are, people buy them, they play them in a day or two, and then they turn right back around, trade it in, and buy the next new game. I mean, those aren't sales for GameStop, who makes almost no margin on new product. Those are sales for the publisher. And they need to be aware of the fact that a lot of the money that they're getting is coming out of the pockets of used game resellers who are buying product to stock their shelves with.
And I think publishers, if you listen to them, and developers as well, they will paint the relationship with GameStop as a purely parasitic one. And it's a lot more symbiotic than that. And again, because there are never any figures, there's only anecdotal evidence. I can only use myself as a game consumer. Before I had this job, and I was working a shitty little part-time job in a cab office, trade-ins were how I got games. That's how I got games. That's how I got half my early review copies for Destructoid. There's too many variables, too many different consumers for them to try and hit something that definitive and say this console is all online. They will take a massive bullet if they do that. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's a gamble they want to take, especially with the way the market is right now.
Well, didn't Sony announce that all PlayStation 4 games are going to be digital day one? At that point, it's like, who cares what you sales? You're buying a digital copy. It's tied to your account. So it just seems like it would be a really bad idea if they went through with this, and I'm not worried about it, personally.
I'm not worried about it at all. I don't think they are in a position where they could justify pulling it off. There's too many risks. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 30% of consoles aren't connected to the internet. How the hell are you going to enforce a no used games platform without connected consoles? I mean, are you going to write off a potential 30% loss on sales of your hardware on the basis that you're going to make all that money back on preventing used game sales? That would scare the shit out of me as an investor. Even just broadband adoption and the speed of broadband in the United States would preclude me from feeling comfortable pushing that forward if I were in that position. I would be very nervous about it. I have to see some really good numbers to convince me.
America's broadband infrastructure is terrible.
Yeah.
And it's worse elsewhere. I mean, Australia, I hear, have a terrible time with it. Parts of Canada.
As ubiquitous as we think the internet is, because we are on it all the time, it's not all the way there yet, and it's certainly not all the way there yet for ma and pa home video game consumer.